Okay, today is a much nicer day. Chilly, but nice temperature for the sheep. And we're gonna finish off putting the straw out for the sheep this morning and the 2 barns we had left, and then all the barns are clean and good for a week or so. We just put straw down in the lamb pen, so they're all happy there. It's not raining today. We've lowered the curtains, so it's really nice temperature in here. There's a good breeze going through, but no rain. But the 2 barns were still left to do from yesterday, so we got this barn done. We have one more barn to give straw to. But today I was going to talk about our feeders in the coveralls because somebody asked for a more detailed look at them. So our coveralls are 50 feet wide by 140 feet long, and the feeder goes right down the center. But they're all in separate panels, so you can take them apart, you can move them, you can rejoin them in various configurations. As you can see here, each one has legs. They're 22.5 inches high. They're built to suit our sheep, which are a little larger. It's a steel plate on the bottom under there, and everything's made out of steel. In the corners of each feeder we have a double rod so that sheep don't get their head stuck in there. So the current spaces are 7.5 inches apart. In future, we're going to widen them a little bit, maybe to 8 inches, just because we have some big-headed rams that tend to find it a little tight in there. But for ewes or smaller sheep, that's a perfect size. What else? Yeah. Initially, the feeder looked like that. It was just the metal. And we found that during breeding season, some rams were able to jump over to try to get into the other breeding groups. So we attached metal to each feeder like that. I don't know if you can see that. There, like that. And we slatted boards in so they're adjustable. We can take them down or put them up. That's just for stopping our rams from jumping over. When the bedding pack's big, it also stops lambs who decide to jump on mom's back and get into the feeder. Prevents them from doing that. But that was an after thing we put in. At the end of each feeder, we have a little gate that lifts up and down, so we can roll the bale out, and it has a little rod where we can lock it. Our bales we use are 4.5 feet wide, so that's what the feeder is basically 4.5 feet wide, so that the bale fits easily down the center. Most panels are 8 feet long, but we have some 10-footers as well at the end, so that lambs don't get out. We have little bars across at the end. We make all our own gates too, so all our gates are attached by little rods that slide through. And likewise on all these feeders we have little links all the way down so that we can put a rod in and a panel across and reconfigure the barn in any way we want. So that makes things handy for quick setup and reconfiguration. Benefit of these feeders that we found, which was unintentional, was that underneath well, we have a dividing wall underneath, and that's to prevent lambs from getting across. It's just a wooden board. And here we put wooden boards in between when we put gates up like this so that nobody can squeeze through. But basically, when the ewes are eating at the feeder like this, what we were finding in the past at feeders is lambs were getting trampled when the ewes were doing this. And now a lamb, 9 times out of 10 or higher, they can squeeze between the legs when the ewes are running towards them and deke under the feeder. Like Katie's under there right now. Everybody's eating right now, so there's no lambs under. But they go under there, and that's saved many a lamb's life. We don't get nearly as many lambs getting trampled by their moms or getting broken legs or anything like that. So that was a good thing that came of it. What else can I say? So yeah, they're 22.5 inches tall, 7.5 inch spacings. Oh, the slants. The slants are very good. We've tried various configurations, horizontal, straight up and down, but the slant seems to work best for deterring lambs from getting through. Doesn't stop them 100%, but less lambs get through that way because when they're jumping they kind of have to do a little twist, which makes things just a little more difficult. So anything that slows them down is good. So we don't, you won't find too many lambs in our feeders here, except for 44 who jumps in at the end. And our feeders have a little lip right here. It's 1 inch high, and that's so when you put the grain in, it doesn't fall out. It also holds all the fines and stuff from the hay, which the sheep can eat. The slant bars we find are also good because people think that the sheep will pull their heads out and waste a lot, but as you can see here, the bars are spaced so that it's like each one has their individual spot. So once they get in, they don't want to share, and they keep their head in there and they stay in there and they eat till they're done. A ewe to get in, see, those ewes tried to get in but they couldn't because these guys weren't giving up their spot, so they'll just walk down the line until they find a spot. So for wastage, there is not very much wastage at all. It's rare that they come in here and stand back and eat, dropping it all. So that works out well. When they get to the end of the bale, sometimes it's just a little wider than they can reach, so we will kick it in if there's a little bit left. But it's not a huge deal, and they do get most of it on their own without any help at all. So I think that's all about the feeders. And our creep pins are handmade too. There you can see the rods, and I don't know what you call those little I don't know, rings that the rod goes through at the bottom and the top. All our gates and everything interlock that way. Our creep pins, our dividing gates, our lambing jugs, everything can be linked together. And this is the creep gates we made. Again, these are solid spaced. We base it on the size of the sheep we have, so depending on your breed, you would want these spaced differently. It easily lets lambs through. No ewes can get through. We put little PVC tubing rollers on them. It helps them slide once they get a little bigger, and at some point they actually won't fit through anymore, and those usually end up being our keeper sheep if their conformation is good, because those will be the fastest growers. It's the easy way to check. Well, even that one, it's a young one, and that one kind of slithered through. So that's how they're done. And we bought these walk-through gates, which I love them. They're fantastic, and they're not expensive. It would cost us more to make these. So we can just walk into the pens, and they just click shut. And those are nice too. And they also interlock with all our gates and stuff. And I think I got everything about the feeders. These are the creep feeders we use. When we started off with sheep, this is how we fed our sheep. You put small bales in the middle, and you put the grain in the troughs, and you can walk through the top if you want to, if you had them in a long line, and they have a little door at the end. They look fantastic, but on the farm we find that they don't work well for us at all. You see how the sheep have their heads in the trough there? They're eating all comfortable. In these feeders, sheep can't stick their faces in. Some people seem to think that's a good thing, but they can just get their little muzzles in. And a bigger ewe with a nice broad muzzle, which is what you want, is really not going to get her muzzle in at all. So as you can see with these, to eat that, like I'm leaning right back, and that's super hard to pull out. Your sheep are not going to eat very much if they have to fight with it that hard to get their food. It's not like they have lots of teeth where they can just chew it down. So you're defeating the purpose if you're trying to restrict how much food your sheep eat, because if you want them to grow, they gotta eat, and they will eat more if they can get it easily. See, that one's happier now that I've actually pulled some out. So we didn't like that. So to get around that, what the adult sheep were doing is they'd put their feet in the trough, and they'd stand over top, and they'd be eating from the top, which was fine. Now they could eat all they wanted, and they were getting as much hay as they needed. But of course they were standing in their grain trough, which is putting bacteria and worms and all that stuff from the ground into the trough at the bottom, contaminating their feed, which is something you don't want. So that's why we went to those feeders and redesigned our own. We just didn't like these feeders at all, but we had them, and a nice thing about them is they're super, super heavy. So we use them as divider walls when we have breeding groups going, because the rams can't push through them and they can't reach each other's noses. And when we have lambs, they do make nice creep feeders. What we'll do is we'll fluff up this hay all the time so that it's easier to get out. But you see, even that little lamb back there, he's trying to get over top to the hay because it's too much of a struggle. So although we do put hay in here, the lambs have access to the hay in the big feeders too. It's mainly used to put our creep in it for the troughs, because it's a really nice height for lambs and feeding creep. But that's our experience with these. Not our favorite. We're making use of them, and they're working well for us in how we use them. But as a feeder like that, I would not recommend them. Well, I decided to show you guys the feeders in our other barns. This is where we have the lambing jugs set up. Right now we have nobody with lambs. Our jugs are 6x6 because we have big sheep. They're hooked onto these feeders that Arnie built as well. And like the others, they have the wood divider underneath. But these ones are narrow. How wide are these ones? 30. So these are 30 inches. Just because we need more space in this barn, because we have the jugs set up on this side, and this is where we do the bonding groups before we bring them over to the coveralls. So we have gates that are easy to open for letting the sheep out, and outside barns to go to the coveralls. We have the same feeders in the back of the barn for breeding groups, and these are the rams and stuff. So they're exactly built the same as the ones in the coveralls, but this is the lambing section of the barn. And so in these feeders we're putting small square bales, and the sheep don't stay in here as long. But again, we have this little thing opens up if we want to put them in. The spacing and everything is exactly the same, it's just the width that's different. These are the jugs we fill up first and use the most, because again, that little area underneath prevents the ewes from laying on their lambs as much. And the open pens over here, if anyone's going to lay on a lamb, it's usually someone in those pens. So it's been saving a lot of lives that way. I told them that open. See, that opens up. And the sheep, what would you call these things?
It's just a 1-inch pipe that I just cut off in 1-inch rocks and just tack 1-inch rods.
So those are what we use for putting the rods through all the time. And so that's how that feeder is set up, which is different from the others. This barn here used to be an old heifer barn, so it's set up a little different again, but same idea. This one had a concrete slab, and there's no escape hatch for anybody in here. So we lamb out in this barn, but we remove lambs from here because they are more likely to get trampled and stuff at the feeders in this barn. But it's fantastic for adults, and this is, like I say, where we usually do all our lambing and breeding and stuff. The bars are spaced the same as in the other barn. We have the option to put the boards up top if we have rams that are jumpy, but the 2 rams here are well behaved and don't feel the need to jump over. So that's how that one's set up, but it is the same width and stuff as the other barn. And we have a new gate that Arnie did just recently, which we like a lot, because when you're bringing the lambs out and the mom's following, you want the gate to open easily and quickly and close again so that the other sheep don't get out. So we have this little mechanism, slides like that, opens, closes. You can do it with one hand and it just stays shut. They can't open it, but you can open it really easily. So I really like those. And the last feeders would be the ram feeder outside. These are the rams we still have left. Some pretty boys in here looking for homes. I got 5 spoken for, and we're gonna be keeping some. And at our farm, everybody is basically indoor outdoor except for the rams. The rams, we don't have the space for them indoors, so they have a lean-to outdoors, 3-sided shelter. So if it's really cool, they can go in there, and there. And it's basically open to the outside. Here we have different feeders because they're outside. Arnie drives in with round bales, and so he made an 8-sided feeder. It's the same height off the ground as our other feeders, because that's the height that works best for our size of sheep, which are Suffolks and just a little bit larger. The heads, they don't get stuck in the spacing. I think he's got these at 8.5. We put the bales in on the flat side, so that, again, I was talking about easy to access the hay. If you put it on the round, it's really hard for them to pull out. They'll give up. They won't eat as much. You'll lose condition. if they can get it easily, they're going to eat that. We lose a little more hay from these feeders because the spacing is a little wider, and they're rams and they tend to be silly and fight over food and stuff. But that works out fine. The little we use is bedding for them, and it's not a massive amount. So yeah, Arnie just drives in and drops bales in these, and we have 2 feeders here for them. I don't know if you can see it. So it's like that. And for feeding grain, because you can't really feed grain in those ones, we do have another one of those Marweld feeders in here. But we got an old grain elevator, which works best. We really like it. It's the right height, and we just pour grain along there when they need grain. And that's all our feed troughs on the farm. We have a few different ones, but basically everything's set up the same. He didn't do angles on these bars in this one, which is another reason that the hay comes out easier. The reason for not doing angles in here is, again, rams are a little more stupid than ewes in that they have bad behavior. So if they're more pushy at a feeder and are more likely to fight at a feeder, and with the slants they can just get stuck a little easier. Whereas this one, they have a quick escape if somebody decides to irritate them. So, and then of course, yeah, we have the mineral feeders, which are in every pen, every barn. They're PVC piping from the plumbing section in your hardware store, and we pour the salt and mineral into each one. We have a rod to tamp it down, because if moisture gets in there, it sometimes doesn't flow. But we do that, and we like these a lot too, because we had a hard time getting mineral feeders where they weren't knocking them over or putting their feet in them or standing in them. But these, they can get their muzzle in, have their lick, and go back to the feed trough. And they work fine there in every barn. And we use loose salt and mineral because sheep generally aren't lickers the way cows are. They're more nibblers, and again, you want them to have their salt and mineral. So the loose salt mineral is something they're gonna nibble at, and they do it even as lambs. They go to those right away. Whereas if you put a block out, some might lick it and some won't. So we want everybody to be doing it. We don't want just the occasional one. So yeah, I would highly recommend loose salt and mineral as opposed to the mineral and salt blocks you can purchase. Okay, that's it from Ewetopia Farms and the feeders we use for these little buggers. Bye for now.